So this is the cloister.
Right, so the interior cloister, the courtyard where, again, only the Dominican nuns would have been able to be present. And as the camera pans around, you'll see that there's pillars, and so there's 7 pillars on each side, and then in the center of the courtyard is a statue of Our Lady, but underneath her is a well. And so this was really, in some ways, just the sort of the central part of the monastery of the sisters. And we still very much appreciate it, even though we can go out, unlike the sisters. It really provides, in the midst of inner city Newark, as you can tell, probably not able to tell with a microphone, but it's almost impossible to even hear traffic. I mean, you hear the airplanes fly over, but it gives you a real sense of just being out and a certain sense of prayerfulness and peace. And so it's really a tremendous gift, especially in the midst of the busy city, to have a place like this.
You were mentioning before that the architects were from Europe?
They were French, and so the sisters came from France. I don't know exactly where, but then the engineers also, who did it. I mean, the workmanship on the places, it just couldn't even be built today.
And what year was that?
The cornerstone is 1880.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
Beautiful. And this is such a beautiful, quiet area, a little oasis.
Yeah, it is. It's very much, when people come in, especially during the summer when we have more flowers and things, one religious sister who came, she actually said she had just a sense of like being back in the garden, you know, like at the beginning of creation, just because of the beauty of the place, especially in the midst of what otherwise is not usually very beautiful.
A city. A city. Although, are the bells original?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Yeah, the bells are original. They work. So we ring them for the Angelus, much to the chagrin of our neighbors, at 6 a.m., 12 noon, and 6 p.m.
and you have no complaints?
Well, the cops haven't showed up yet, so,
That's great.
so I think we're doing okay.
Okay, this is a beautiful view of the cloister, and we're going to continue our tour inside this beautiful monastery.
Let me show you. Hello. Hi.
Hey. Brother Francis is taking us into the crypt. This is going to be a very interesting experience. So the camera might wobble a little as Mary Emery comes down the stairs, but it's more important that she watch herself. So maybe we'll pause the camera and pick it up inside. We're now inside the crypt, and Father Francis is going to give us a little unique tour.
So very simply, the sisters were all buried here, and so even after their death, they didn't leave the monastery. Their remains were kept here. When we came to move into the building, before that, the sisters had been removed. We moved in here in 2000, and it was like 12 or 13 years ago.
Oh, rather recently.
Yeah, relatively recently.
Right.
Yeah.
And there were sisters living here?
There were still a few Dominican nuns living here at that moment, both with the neighborhood and their age and the few number. They just couldn't keep up the building anymore. And so they desired to, in any case, they were very, very happy that we would be able to come and take possession of it and use it as our novitiate, as our friary. But so the sisters were buried here, and before we moved in, their remains were removed and brought to a cemetery not too far from here. And now, at least theoretically, the friars will be buried here, right? But so it's a good meditation to consider where I'll probably be someday.
Memento mori.
Exactly, exactly. The Capuchins would be proud of you. And so to remember your death. And so at this point, we only have one person buried down here, but certainly the best known, and that's Father Benedict Groeschel. And so I'm going to show you his. I'll show you his.
Excellent.
So just please watch the stuff here.
Okay.
Especially the camera.
Okay, we're continuing into another aspect of the crypt. And Bob will assist Amory coming up. Oh, isn't that beautiful?
Sure. So Father Benedict Groeschel was one of the founding members of our community, and he never would accept the title founder, but he said that he was the main instigator, and so, which is probably for the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal, we call ourselves CFRs, right? Community of the Friars of the Renewal. For CFRs, instigator is probably the correct word to talk about our beginnings. And so our community was founded in 1987 by 8 Capuchin friars, and Father Benedict was the one really leading the charge. He was a Catholic priest, a Capuchin Franciscan, a clinical psychologist, and worked for many years with children in sort of an orphanage foster home called Children's Village. And from that, out of that, developed a tremendous compassion and love for the materially poor, was involved in dozens, if not hundreds of people's lives. But out of that also developed this tremendous ministry to priests and then sort of throughout the world, giving lectures and talks and retreats and spiritual direction and what have you to so many different peoples, was also very well known on EWTN and television. And so his remains are here. Obviously not all of the friars are going to have a burial like this.
So prestigious.
Yeah, exactly. But so because of who he both was to the church, at his funeral, I was extremely moved. There was probably about 300 priests that came to his funeral, and just the sort of the respects that were paid to him in that way. We recognize that within the larger church, he really was something of a prophet that the Lord raised up in our time. So not only is he important to us, but also to the church, and so buried with a certain solemnity. And I come down here and ask him for help pretty regularly because I need it.
Are you the director of
So
this?
we call our superiors servants.
Okay.
St. Francis said he wanted the superiors to be known as guardians of the life or servants of the brothers. Okay. So we refer to our superiors as servants. So I am the servant of our friary and also the novice director. Beautiful. So I hold both of those roles, and thereby need even more help than most people
from
my ministry, from Father Benedict. Exactly.
Benedict and all of us.
Exactly.
Where was his burial? Where was the church?
The funeral was at the cathedral here in Newark.
Okay.
They did the basilica. They did a beautiful job. They really, it was we were extremely grateful.
Oh, thank you for this special experience.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that at all. Yeah. Okay, we're going to continue the tour of the crypt. We're at the front door. Father Francis will explain this ministry once again.
So very simply, we offer some sort of hospitality to our neighbors. And so we usually have sandwiches, which are sometimes made by school children, sometimes made by ourselves, sometimes made by our volunteers, sandwiches, different kinds of food, sweets, coffee, something to drink. And so people can come by, have a little something to eat. Sometimes they want to go, but a lot of times they just want to sit, be able to talk to a brother, share about an issue, maybe receive a prayer.
Okay. And this is what Father, is that Father Francis?
Brother Francois. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we met him before.
So Brother Francois is one of our novices, and the brothers take turns sort of attending the front door and being able to be with the people and to serve. So, yeah.
So he's speaking with a neighbor?
Actually, he's speaking with a guest of ours right now.
Oh, and he's speaking French. Beautiful.
Yeah. So Brother Francois is originally from France, and he actually came here to the United States specifically to join our community.
Beautiful. Mm-hmm. Let's go out into the entrance. Why don't you lead us? Hi guys, just ignore us. We're doing a little interview.
All right, sure.
Enchanté.
Enchanté.
Okay, we're outside. Don't fall. And this is a little foyer. And what is this area called?
I don't know. Okay. It's just our entryway.
Yeah. I don't know what it's
So
called.
it doesn't have any particular name.
Right.
But it's just it's the front gate where we're able to receive people.
Excellent.
And and folks are able to come in sometimes into the friary, or when it's nice out, we just have people able to sit outside and just kind of enjoy the warm weather.
Right, and it was made as a cloister, so these walls are real serious.
That's exactly right. So originally it was a cloistered monastery. So the public, when it was still a cloistered monastery, could come to the door here, enter here, but they wouldn't be able to pass into any place beyond that.
Right.
And so obviously that's opened up now because we're not a cloistered community. We're apostolic, and so we can go out and invite people in. But originally that's exactly it. So the walls were pretty much, this was, if you weren't a nun, this is about as far as you got.
I was recently in the cloistered monastery of the Poor Clares in Galway.
Wow.
And a friend of mine's cousin became a Poor Clare, so we were able to go in, have breakfast, but in the visiting room.
Right.
And they showed us the line of demarcation that no one could go beyond except the sisters.
It's exactly right. And so actually the place where we have our soup kitchen now is the area that visitors could have sat and visited with the sisters. So there used to be an iron grill there.
Right.
That the sisters would sit on one side and the visitors would sit on the other. But now that's the place where we have our soup kitchen, where we invite our neighbors in to be able to have something to eat.
And how often does the soup kitchen get served?
Just on Tuesdays at this point.
Okay.
So it's open once a day, or once a week. But again, we have this on the other days of the week to be able to serve. It's just less people. Usually we have probably between 70 and 100 people who come to the soup kitchen on a weekly basis.
Okay. And who cooks?
We take turns. So we have maybe approximately 20 to 30 volunteers that come every Tuesday.
Okay.
And a brother's in charge of heading up the kitchen. But many times one of the volunteers cooks. They often bring the food to prepare, and then the volunteers, along with the brothers, serve.
That's great.
Yeah, it's really wonderful.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the outside area of what would have been the public area. And now it is just open and so well kept. Who keeps the garden?
Mostly Brother Andre. So one of our brothers is from Iowa originally and has a fantastic capacity at gardening and making things beautiful.
Where, since you mentioned Iowa and since you mentioned France, where are some of the brothers from? You're from upstate.
I'm from Buffalo, New York.
Right.
But in our friary we have, so myself, Brother Francois from France, Brother Andre is from Iowa. We have another man from Wyoming, Texas, Atlanta, Georgia, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, really just from all over. And a couple of our men, the novices, so the newer men, one is from Poland and another one is from Russia, and the rest are from the United States. But so it's a pretty diverse.
Right.
Yeah.
And they specifically came to be part of this house, this community.
This community, well, the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal. So we have houses in different places in the Northeast U.S., also a few in Europe, but yes, specifically to join our religious community.
Excellent. Okay, we're going to go inside and continue the tour. This is Father Lou with Father Francis Mary here at the Franciscan Friar of the Renewal. And the full name of this
monastery
is
Most Blessed Sacrament Friary.
And we'll be right back. Hello, I'm here again with Father Francis Mary. We've already had a multifaceted tour of the entire monastery, and now we're going to wind down with some questions and answers, maybe some of the questions that you might have. So let's go back into history with Father Francis. Father Francis, when did the Franciscans found this monastery, and under whose guidance?
Right, so it was about 12 years ago. And Father Bernard Murphy was what we would call the general servant. Okay. So again, the servant of the whole community, right? And so at that time we had an exceptional number of novices. I think we had maybe 17 guys that had entered the community that year alone. And so there was simply seeing the need, okay, we need a bigger building that would be able to house them. And also, as you've seen from the tour, they were hoping for some sort of a facility where men could have room to pray without having to run away. Because sometimes many of our buildings, this is a very unique facility for us. Right. Typically, we are in inner cities like Newark, but in much smaller buildings, like an old rectory, like an old convent that's not used anymore, so we take it over. But so often, there's no place to go. You know, you go outside and it's just pavement and sidewalks. So there was the hope that a building could be located where the men who are the novices in formation would be able to stay within the building, but still have a sense of not being just crushed by the city. Because you could imagine, for instance, one of the men last year, who still lives here, is from Kentucky, grew up on a farm.
Oh.
So to come here is, honestly, it's a tremendous suffering for him. A place like this makes it palatable, even if it's not nice. You
See
know,
some grass.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. Just a little bit of green or something.
Right.
So that was a big part of the thought. And so the Dominican nuns that were here needed to get rid of the building. They simply couldn't maintain it any longer. And so there was an agreement that was come to, and so we were able to move into the building, again, about 12, 13 years ago.
Right, great. And your Franciscan brothers had to renovate, I imagine, a lot.
Right. So there was a lot of work for almost the first 10 years. It was almost constant construction in one way or another.
Who funds this?
All of our money is donations, and so we don't receive money from the church, like the Archdiocese of Newark didn't, and we didn't expect them to, but the Archdiocese of Newark didn't give us money to so it was generous individuals and people who believe in the importance of the mission that we have. And all of our support is just, basically, we survive by divine providence, and that's it.
It's so Franciscan.
Yeah.
If people were to contact you, how would do you have an internet site or an address?
Sure. So there's both an internet site for the community at large, FRANCISCANFRIARS.com.
Good one.
How we got that, I don't know. We're not very technologically savvy, but somehow we got a good internet address.
Right.
But also our friary here has an internet address. I believe it's newarkfriary.org.
Okay.
And so both of those sites would have phone number for this place and other ways to contact us.
Great, and we'll have them on our bylines.
That'd be
as
great.
well.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything to advertise and promote the word. Do you have many, and I'm going to say men because this is only men, do you have any men interested or expressing interest?
So we do. Vocations today is a big question everywhere in the church, right? I mean, with maybe the exception of a place like Africa, or I lived in Central America for 6 years. Some of for instance, the Poor Clares in Central America were doing amazingly well insofar as vocations. Numbers of young women. Here, it is a bit of a struggle, but God has been good to us. We consistently have young men entering. Right now, I have 6 novices. Last year, I had 6 novices. This coming year, it looks like I'll have 5 probably.
These are actually new people coming in.
New people coming in. And this is the time right now. So March, April, which is the months that we're in, is the time when the young men are praying, like, is this, because we have them send in an application, and so there's, this whole process they have to go through. And so we have a number of people working in vocations, accompanying young men, and they're very good, because if they think you don't have a vocation to be a CFR, they'll tell you.
Sure.
And they say, well, maybe diocesan priesthood, maybe this other religious community.
Right.
But so how many young men will enter this year, I'm not sure. But, we have a good number interested, thanks be to God. And the young men coming are good.
Good. What kind of careers have they come from?
It's all over the place.
What about you?
Yeah, so I was a foster care social worker.
Okay.
I majored
so you've always been in the service aspect of it.
I majored in psychology and philosophy in college, but hadn't really thought about the priesthood. And then when I left college, I went to SUNY Geneseo, so a state university. When I left college, I did a year of volunteer work in Harlem, which was, for a boy from suburbia, Buffalo, it was a huge culture shock. I mean, big time. But the people were wonderful, and it was a tremendous experience. And then after that year of volunteer work at the church in Harlem, I did 3 years of work, more or less, as a foster care social worker in New York City, working in the 5 boroughs. And so that was quite the experience. But that's how I met the Friars, and that sort of started me on my own journey towards becoming a Franciscan and ultimately a priest.
Okay, we're going to stop there because I want to pick up that in the next segment. This is Father Louis Scurti chatting with Father Francis Mary, who's given us a great tour of this facility and some aspects of the life of the Franciscans here. This is Father Louis Scurti here at the Franciscan Monastery of the Most Blessed Sacrament in Newark, New Jersey. God bless you.